Mounted on a pedestal overlooking Clemson's Memorial Stadium, locked in a secure box, is one of the most visible traditions in all of college football, Howard's Rock. Before each home game, Clemson players gather around Howard's Rock, rub it for good luck, then race down the hill into the stadium known as Death Valley. Hall of Fame broadcaster Brent Musburger claimed it the most exciting 25 seconds in all of college football. Howard's Rock is named for the legendary Clemson football coach Frank Howard, who received it as a gift from his close friend Samuel Jones in the mid-1960s. Jones found the 2.5-pound rock while traveling through Death Valley, California, and thought Howard might find some use for it here back at Clemson. The rock didn't make a great first impression, however, as Howard is said to have used it originally as a doorstop. There, the rock remained until the summer of 1966, when, according to Clemson legend, Howard stumbled across it while cleaning out his office. Take this rock and throw it over the fence or out the ditch. Howard reportedly told Clemson booster Gene Williman that. So how did this rock become the most enduring symbol of college football on the campus of Clemson University? Here to help sort it all out for us is the grandson of Frank Howard's close friend, Samuel Jones, Gary Massey, and his mother, Selena Jones Massey. Thank you two for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
What a great story, Howard's Rock. Yeah. We're embarking on the 50th year of Howard's Rock. You played at Clemson.
83 through 85.
83 through 85.
Yeah.
So you know the importance of rubbing that rock. And I think the comment is, give me 110% or keep your filthy hands off my rock.
Yeah. Yeah, that was what Coach Howard would tell his players. You know, if they didn't give 110%, they didn't have, any right touching that rock. And I can tell you, Brent Musburger, there's no way to describe to people the excitement that you feel when you touch it and you come down that hill with 87,000 plus folks that are yelling for you. But it really did have humble beginnings, because he just picked it up really as a souvenir when he was out at Death Valley. We're thinking it was 64 or 65, right in there. And he told my mother, and she can tell the story too, that when he picked up the first rock, it was so hot, because Death Valley it's one of the hottest places on earth, especially in the summer. And at any rate, he got a couple of handkerchiefs and actually was able to get the rock. And as one of my cousins has told me, he got several rocks and put them in his old red Ford Falcon, and he brought them back as souvenirs. And so that's kind of how that started. And legend goes, what actually my grandfather told me, because I used to, when I lived at Malden Hall, I would go see him over at the Clemson house. And one day I asked him about the rock, and he just said, when I first brought it to Frank Howard, he put it on his desk. And he told him, Frank, I got you something, a souvenir from Death Valley. And Coach Howard said, Sam, what in the Sam's hell you want me to do with this blasted rock, And he said, well, I thought you might use it as a paperweight. And I think it stayed on his desk for a while, and then he used it as a doorstop. And, he didn't really think that much about the rock until Gene Williman put it on the pedestal, and the guys touched it, and they beat Virginia. And then that's when he legendarily said.
The tradition began from that point. Selena, your dad must have been a special person to do something like that. Do you recall, I'm sure you were a young lady when all this happened, do you recall the moment when this happened and he and Frank Howard's friendship?
I do recall it. I used to, when I was just a tiny little girl, Daddy took me to all the ball games. And I love clothes. I've always loved clothes. And I love seeing the way everybody dressed. And those poor women, they wore hats, they wore pocketbooks, they wore high-heel shoes, and they wore girdles. And that was hot, but they endured it. So, Clemson fans loved football way back then.
Would you have thought that what your dad did during those years by bringing this rock, then your son has an opportunity to rub this famous rock that your father, his grandfather, brought to Clemson University? Would you have thought this legend would continue on for 50 years and beyond?
Never. I think I thought about it a lot, and it just had to be God sent. And that's That's what I think about it. And I know Daddy really loved giving souvenirs to his friends, because when I was just old enough to really start playing in a playhouse outside, if he spent the night in a hotel, he brought me back a little tiny cake of soap. And oh, that made my playhouse so special. Everybody wanted it. And I still have a special house. It's just like I want it.
Would you have thought all these years later that there's still so much fuss about something that your dad did to bring that rock to Clemson University and the Clemson football program?
No. It had to come from a deep, deep yearning from people about their college. And Clemson is special. It's special.
I think we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gary, for you, it had to have mean a little something special for you as you ran down that hill, rubbed that rock, and ran down the hill knowing this is part of my family's legacy as well that we left here at Clemson.
Absolutely. I couldn't have dreamed of any other school to go play football for. So, it's just so exciting to be able to play at Clemson. And I guess I tell people, I always joke, I grew up with orange diapers. There's no other school I could go to because my grandfather brought the rock, and I always dreamed of touching it. And I've always dreamed, too, of one day going out to Death Valley and, actually maybe even finding a rock, myself, just like my grandfather did, kind of like a pilgrimage.
Okay.
And
So let's fast forward. So Clemson University and Dabo Swinney and the football team is vying for a national championship this year. So you decided maybe it's time to retrace some of these steps. Mm-hmm. So your son, Houston, I'd like for you to come join us.
Yep.
You and your son, Houston,
yep,
are planning on embarking on this venture. Tell us a little bit about it. Yep. What your plans are for this.
Yeah. My son, his first name's Samuel. He's named after his great-grandfather, and my grandfather, Sam C. Jones. And so I mentioned it to my son, listen, wouldn't it be awesome if we could just go out to Death Valley, California before the game, kind of retrace my grandfather's steps, and actually pick up a piece of history, find a rock ourselves that we can bring back, in his honor. And so I'm excited about doing that. And to my mother, she's 84 now. My father passed away this past year, and it's a blessing to still have her with us. And while she's still, here and her mind is good, I thought it'd be just an awesome thing to be able. She told me she wants me to bring her one too. And hey, we're probably going to bring one for Dabo as well. Maybe he can use as a doorstop in his office.
Can I put my order in?
Sure. Yeah, you bet.
I like that one too. Houston's got this picture of a portrait of your grandfather, mm-hmm, of your father.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you kind of give us a little lesson on that? What you found that just about a year ago?
Yep. This was actually, my grandfather had some of his different, various things he had in his apartment when he lived at the Clemson house. Back then, they let it, it was a motel at first before it became a dormitory. And so a lot of the folks that lived there, they let continue to live there. So up until he was almost 90 years old, he lived at the Clemson house, so for 25 years. And when he passed away, several of his things like this we acquired, and we forgot where this was. I know my mom's looked for it for years. She knew we had it, and it was actually under some various things under the bed in this back room. And this is 1965. I think that this was given to him probably by some of his good friends, because a lot of them have signed this when he retired. Mm-hmm. For years he was an appraiser of timber for the government, worked for the Corps of Engineers. He actually, I think, also helped with some of the appraisal on some of the extension property for Clemson. So great guy, but this is exactly how he looked in 1965. It's really great. He's a short little man, mm-hmm, but just a wonderful, just vibrant, twinkling in his eyes, that kind of little fella. When you saw him and he hadn't seen you in a while, he'd be like, good gracious alive, good to see you, And everyone that met him loved him. Coach Howard was a good friend of his, as we've mentioned. But at any rate, yep, this is about the time he went out to Death Valley,
Right.
64, 65, right in there. So thought it would be pretty neat just
Yeah.
to show that.
And to keeping that theme apart with that hat of his on.
Yeah.
He loved good clothes, right?
Always.
He wore that
A
hat.
suit,
Wore
a
that
tie, and a hat.
Yeah.
Well, to take a statement out of your good gracious alive, we're out of time.
Yeah.
But we thank you for your legacy that your father, that your grandfather, that your great-grandfather has left for Clemson University and the Clemson Athletic Department. It's a great thing. We're happy that you joined us today, and thanks so much for the story.
Thank
It's a
you.
great story.
Thank you.